Let me paint what I hope to be a familiar picture. The big assignment is due tomorrow. You spent weeks of hard work procrastinating it so that you could rush it in a few hours. With your laptop and books open, energy drinks on standby, you innocently Google some study music. And lo and behold, there she is, the lo-fi study girl. You down the first of many energy drinks to come. Your heart pounds like this. But your ears hear this. And so you've conjured something similar to this. And thus, the engine for productivity is in full swing. In this video, I'd like to explore the whereabouts of this lo-fi girl, the history of lo-fi, and, interestingly, how to make it. This is a brief history of lo-fi hip-hop and how to make it. Fidelity means accuracy to the original recording, so when something is lo-fi, short for low fidelity, it means a lower accuracy to the original recording. So basically a shittier recording or version. For example, this video, it isn't shitty, it's lo-fi. This anime, lo-fi. My life. Lo-fi can best be described as a sort of auditory aesthetic. As such, the genre of lo-fi is pretty much a large umbrella term that encompasses a bunch of other genres such as chill wave, chill hop, vaporwave, and jazz hop, just to name a few. It is unintrusive, repetitive music, a medley of jazz nostalgic samples, chill, boom bap drums, and lo-fi mixing techniques. However, a point about unique and good lo-fi beats is their intentionality, and this is a point I'll get back to later. It's just that with so few elements to hide behind, every nuance, every sound selection is placed center stage even if the music itself isn't. So intentionality, especially when it comes to the emotion that is trying to elicit, in my opinion, is the difference between a generic and a standout producer. The difference between lo-fi and my love life is that lo-fi is intentionally shitty. If we look deeper, we can see where the inspirations for these seemingly disparate elements originate and how they all come together.
What the hell is this?
As early as the 1950s, people were staying home and recording their own stuff. Imperfections like tape hiss, lower recording quality, and environmental interference were all byproducts of that DIY recording situation. Its association to lo-fi probably started here. The earliest rock and roll records of this time and its progression to garage rock in the 1960s and then punk in the 70s can be seen as like the earliest and most literal forms of lo-fi. The earliest popularization of this new underground aesthetic is largely contributed to William Burger King Foot Lettuce's radio show on the WFMU radio station in 1986. This segment on his show that was showing off homemade music and home-produced music was the first time lo-fi was coined its own aesthetic and its own genre even. Off the back of this radio show and off of a bunch of actually quite successful lo-fi music, aka music that was made in people's backyards, an example of which was the Beach Boys, this aesthetic was further honed and, even embraced. Lo-fi had started a movement and the underground was weaponizing these imperfections and subpar equipment to form their own audio aesthetic. Continuing on, through the 80s and 90s, lo-fi started to define a particular type of indie rock band. This continued from the 90s through to the 2000s, using these DIY techniques to circumvent traditional labels and recording studios, with the aesthetic continuing to be pursued by genres such as shoegaze rock and indie rock. Even today, lo-fi still has deep ties to these indie roots in both its aesthetic and ideology. Talking about the most modern iteration of lo-fi, and probably the one most people are familiar with, two people stand out as the grandfathers of the genre, one of which being American producer and rapper J Dilla. J Dilla brought the hip-hop influence to lo-fi hip-hop. At the time, J Dilla stuck out from his contemporaries for having more relaxed boom-bap drum beats that were also more humanized, and how he achieved this was by turning quantization on. This quantization technique, combined with his choice of lively drum samples and laid-back boom-bap beats, informed the rhythm and groove of modern lo-fi. Also, J Dilla's sample-based techniques, so sampling from songs and music and other pieces of art, the audio degradation that came from that process furthered or cemented the lo-fi aesthetic. The second major influence on lo-fi was Japanese bedroom producer Nujabes, or Nujabes, which I can only assume is German for Nuyes Bees.
You like jazz?
Evidently, Nujabes did very much enjoy jazz, as his work combined elements of hip-hop, jazz, and electronic music. He pushed the idea of a bedroom producer, mostly because most of the stuff that he produced was inside his bedroom, and his works formed the backbone of lo-fi, simply because they were sort of the first to combine these seemingly disparate elements of jazz and hip-hop, not only in genre but under a signature emotion, something that he described as bittersweet nostalgia. Nujabes's contributions also stretch further than just the musical side though. His works, being the soundtrack for iconic animes, most notably Samurai Champloo, is also a massive reason as to why lo-fi, the musical genre, has such visual ties to anime. Although Nujabes's efforts on Samurai Champloo were probably lo-fi's strongest ties to anime, Asian and African American culture had a pretty rich history together already, with producers sampling sound effects from old Chinese kung fu movies and anime, including J Dilla and artists such as the Wu-Tang Clan. Hip-hop was drawing influence from anime, but anime was also drawing influence from hip-hop. The result of this history is lo-fi's distinct visual motifs, that being 1, anime, 2, cartoons, most of the time The Simpsons, and 3, retro vintage aesthetics, so things like VHS filters and CRT scan lines, those sort of things. The idea that lo-fi emerged as a response to big labels, most of its prolific producers are simply internet bedroom producers. So when it emerged in the late 2000s with a stronger association with jazz and hip-hop and anime than ever before, its massive popularity existed mostly online. And because of the bedroom producers that make majority of this genre, larger labels have very little to do with this alternative genre. And thus its popularity has been maintained and spread mostly across the internet, across platforms such as SoundCloud and YouTube. It's safe to assume most people's foray into the genre was a YouTube live stream, such as Lo-Fi Girl or Chilled Cow's Lo-Fi live stream. Spotify hadn't become mainstream yet, Apple Music hadn't even launched, leaving YouTube and SoundCloud as the internet's choice to consume this type of music. Also, at the time, streams were a relatively new feature on YouTube. As YouTube likes to do, their algorithm was favoring these streams, and so it was pushing it to more people. Lo-Fi really had this sort of perfect storm of all these things coming together at the same time for it to explode as much as it did. I mean, these streams have amassed over 1 billion views. Oh, and a quick side note about the mystery of this Lo-Fi Girl. The original one belonged to an anime called Whisper of the Heart, and due to copyright infringement, they had to remodel it a little bit, but she's just as good, not quite as iconic, but just as good. You can still tune into these streams today and catch, hundreds of thousands of people listening and stressing and rushing to get their work done and contemplating every choice they've ever had to make. In a climate where a hi-fi sound is easier to attain than ever, even by bedroom producers, it's ironic that the lo-fi aesthetic has spilled into almost every genre. Joji's mix of lo-fi and R&B being some of my favorite examples. More than just the audio aesthetic, the ideology of lo-fi's music production has spilled over and has become a breeding ground of new internet and bedroom producers, like Wallflower. I would used to make lo-fi beats in between studying, so I would study for 40 minutes and then within 20 minutes I'd find a sample or a loop, throw some drums on it, and that would be like my backing track for studying for the next 40 minutes, and I would just repeat that process. The intentionality of the lo-fi aesthetic is what sets it apart. Its humanization and grounding of any genre that it touches is what makes it so human, so desirable, and so nostalgic for a time that people haven't even seen before. I personally believe that lo-fi is an incredible genre of music and an incredible place to start your music production journey. It has an incredibly low skill floor and an almost infinite skill ceiling. And also, the fundamental techniques and aesthetics of the genre can basically be applied to any genre you can dream of. Lo-fi is an incredibly important part of my music journey, and hopefully this did a good job of encapsulating everything. If you're interested enough to listen to this video about lo-fi, I really implore you to go make it. Like, FL Studio trial is free, Ableton trial is free. There's plenty of free programs that you can try it on. It's a really quick way to fall in love with music in the way that I did, which is to be able to put the things you hear in your head down and make them real. And after a while, the better you get at it, you can put things that don't come in the form of music, like emotions and stories and all that great stuff. So let's get right into making it. I split this video up into 2 parts. If you want to go learn how to make lo-fi in the way that I've stressed here, you can check that video out here, and I suggest that you do to watch it. Now, go!